There are people who have dedicated and risked their lives to uncover the secrets hidden by our planet. On the icy roof, yet at the bottom of our planet, there are still many mysteries that remain unanswered to this day. More than 100 years ago, one man launched a series of research expeditions to our poles, and for the first time in history, he used airplanes for such explorations. His name was Richard E. Byrd, an admiral in the U.S. military and one of the most famous explorers in history. Today, we're talking about his lost Antarctic diary, as well as the alleged encounter with a civilization living inside the Earth.
Napoli planes will add a new dimension to Antarctic exploration. Richard Byrd, the first to blaze an air route to the North Pole, prepares for a similar flight over the bottom of the Earth.
Exploring the Earth's north and south poles still presents technical challenges for modern research expeditions, even with all the advanced equipment and technology we have today. 70, 100, or more years ago, such explorations were filled with enormous risks and were truly daring undertakings reserved only for the bravest and most capable individuals. One of those people was Richard Byrd, one of the youngest admirals in the history of the U.S. Navy, who achieved that rank at just 41 years old. He didn't earn his ranks and the highest American honors by fighting around the world, even though he did serve in both World War I and World War II. He received his honors as recognition for his scientific research and his pioneering expeditions to the North and South Poles in the 20th century, because this was the man who was the first to fly a plane over both the North and South Poles, not only as a pilot but also as a navigator. He also participated as an organizer of other expeditions over a period of more than 30 years, and to this day he leads one of the largest military naval fleets at the South Pole, that is, on Antarctica itself. This refers to Operation High Jump, which we already talked about in an earlier video, and he flew over the North Pole almost 100 years ago, that is, in 1926. In that year, but for today's topic, 1946 is very important. And 1947, the year when this operation took place, because it was supposedly from that time that his long-lost diary surfaced, a diary in which, during his flight over the Earth's South Pole, he described an encounter with a civilization living inside the Earth, that is, in Agartha itself. As for the lost and found diary, here's an interesting fact before the main point. In 1990, his lost diary and notebook were actually found, but from 1926. The year of his first ever flight over the North Pole. That diary and notebook, whose pages you're looking at right now, undoubtedly exist and are significant evidence. Some historians and researchers, however, have cast doubt on his historic flight, concluding that there is a possibility the flight data was falsified, suggesting that Admiral Byrd and his co-pilot Floyd Bennett simply couldn't have flown over the North Pole because they didn't have enough fuel and didn't have enough time. All of this happened on May 9, 1926. That was the year when they took off from Norway on this historic mission, during which Byrd kept his notes in his old diary dated from 1925. That year, this flight from 1926, the year above the North Pole, made this man famous and launched his career into the stratosphere, along with the controversial flight diary you're watching right now. Completely authentic. But it doesn't contain the mysteries that most of you are most interested in. But this diary is very important, because if there is one lost diary from 1946, is it possible that there might be another lost diary that tells different and fantastic stories, this time from the South Pole? From 1947, according to internet rumors, such a diary definitely exists, a diary supposedly written by Admiral Byrd during his flight over Antarctica and the South Pole. This was during Operation High Jump. Operation High Jump was the largest military scientific operation ever, taking place between August 1946 until the end of February 1947. That year, 4,700 people, 13 ships, 33 airplanes, aircraft carriers, submarines. It was an unexpectedly large fleet that, right after the end of World War II, headed to a remote place, namely Antarctica. This was officially for scientific research and strategic assessment of the continent, where, among other things, they were searching for valuable ores and minerals, like uranium, for example, which was absolutely necessary for the production of nuclear weapons. Those were the official objectives, which you can still find on Wikipedia today, for example, but unofficially, there are rumors that this fleet, led by Admiral Byrd, was searching for something else, something they eventually found, and something that ultimately drove them away from this place. Because after this operation, Admiral Byrd made several official statements, after which he never publicly commented again. One of those official statements from 1947 was this one, where he commented that the United States must develop protective measures against aircraft capable of coming from both poles at high speeds. Was Admiral Byrd here referring to future human conflicts and wars, or did he see something else that prompted him to make such a statement? We don't know this for sure, but we do know that not long after the discovery of his North Pole diary in 1996, a new diary appeared on the internet that year, with the first entry dated February 19, 1947, right near the end of Operation High Jump, and the contents of this alleged diary are, to put it mildly, shocking. Of course, that's if it's true, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. This alleged diary begins with an entry by Admiral Byrd, describing how a person's rationality becomes irrelevant and how an individual simply has to accept their own insignificance and the inevitability of the truth, and how he is unable to reveal his diary to the general public, but hopes that one day this diary will be available for everyone to read, or in this case, for everyone to watch. And so, this diary begins with routine entries about the takeoff procedure at 6 o'clock in the morning on the 19th of February, 1947 of that year. After 3 hours of flying over this desolate and icy region of Antarctica at an altitude of 1 kilometer, where they occasionally experienced turbulence, they lost both their magnetic and gyro compasses, which is a normal occurrence when approaching the South Pole. At 9:15, they spotted unknown mountains on the horizon and decided to get closer and investigate exactly what it was, because up until that day, that mountain range had never been discovered. Half an hour later, at 10 in the morning, they flew over this mountain range, behind which they discovered a flowing river and something else that definitely shouldn't have been there. They discovered a green valley. They found vast green valleys and green hills with dense forests and animals moving across this land. One of these animals looked quite familiar. It looked like an elephant, but after they descended and looked from their plane through binoculars, they discovered that this wasn't an elephant. It was a mammoth, an animal that officially went extinct on Earth thousands of years ago. At 10:30, the outside temperature around them rose from well below 0 to 24 degrees. They lost their navigation devices and radio contact with the camp. They also lost their main point of reference. That was just the sun, which they could no longer see, and they no longer knew where they were. At 11:30, a strange city appears on the horizon. They lose control of their plane, which is taken over by some kind of autopilot, and two strange disc-shaped craft appear next to their plane. Disc-shaped, emitting some kind of light. These strange craft approached the plane, over which they no longer had control, and it seemed as if they were escorting it toward the city. On the hulls of these discs, Byrd and his co-pilot noticed strange symbols. Those symbols were, by then, the very well-known swastika. At 11:35, their radio came on and a voice with a strange English accent addressed them. "Admiral Byrd, welcome to our land. You will be landing in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, because you are in good hands." And at that moment, their plane lost engine power and it seemed as if the entire aircraft was being controlled by some invisible force. At 11:40, Admiral Byrd and his co-pilot landed in front of the city, and 5 minutes after landing, their plane was approached by strange, exceptionally tall and blue people who came to escort them into the city itself. Here, Admiral Byrd's diary entries stop and continue only after the events, which Admiral Byrd later recorded from memory. After landing, they were loaded onto some kind of platform without wheels, and this platform took them toward a strangely illuminated city whose buildings were made of some kind of glass-like material. Then they entered one of the buildings, where they were given new escorts, but this time in the form of beautiful women with blonde hair. These women led him to something that looked like an elevator, after which he found himself in front of a room where he was told not to be afraid because he would soon be received by the Master, that is, the Lord. His co-pilot did not come with him, but was left in the lobby of this building. Admiral Byrd here describes the rooms and the city itself, which had an incredible appearance that's hard to put into words. And here, I'll leave the rest to your imagination. Soon he entered a room where he was greeted by an older man who welcomed him. "Welcome to our land, Admiral. We have allowed you to enter our land because you are a person of noble character and someone who is very well known to the outside and surface world. You are in a region called Ariane, an area of the inner world of planet Earth. We will not prolong your mission, and soon you will be safely escorted out of our territory, but before that, let us tell you exactly why we brought you here. Until now, we have never interfered in your conflicts, your wars, or your barbarism on the surface of the planet, but due to a new set of circumstances and your creation of a new and powerful weapon, which you began testing and dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After those events, we sent our craft to the surface to investigate exactly what was happening. Your kind has started to meddle with energies and forces you are not ready for. Energies and forces like atomic energy, and we expressed our concern to your leaders. Our ambassadors had already been in contact with your leaders, who decided not to listen to us and instead chose violence and open conflict, trying to shoot at and bring down our craft on the surface, which is completely pointless since our culture and science are thousands of years more advanced than yours." Admiral Byrd interrupted here and asked, "Sir, what does this have to do with me?" To which he soon received an answer. "A huge, dark storm is gathering above your world, a storm that will not end until you destroy the very last flower on the surface of your planet. Your recent world war was only a prelude to what is coming, and soon your world will be covered in thick, black dust. Dust that will destroy your civilization, after which only a few of you will survive. In the distant future, we can foresee your redevelopment, where you will seek out that lost knowledge, those lost treasures. Treasures that will be hidden and kept safe here with us. And when that time comes again, we will emerge once more and help you build your new civilization. Maybe by then you will understand the futility of wars and their consequences. Because you won't find answers in your weapons, and your science will have no solutions for these problems. You will now return to the surface and deliver this message to your leaders." And Admiral Byrd, after this brief message, was escorted out of the room with a gentle smile from this man and a friendly farewell and wave of the hand, after which he said to him, "Farewell, my son." They escorted him back the same way he had come to the plane, returned him to the air, and released him at the same altitude at which they had arrived. At 2:15 in the afternoon, they received the last message from their escort. "We are leaving you. You have free control." Just a few minutes later, they found themselves once again above the vast, white, icy expanse, only 27 minutes away from their base camp. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they landed back at the base. Operation High Jump suddenly and unexpectedly ended ahead of schedule at the end of February, on March 11, 1947. After returning to America, Admiral Byrd went to an official briefing at the Pentagon, after which intelligence and medical services questioned him for 6.5 hours. The message that Admiral Byrd received and later relayed at the Pentagon eventually reached the President of the United States as well. Admiral Byrd was, of course, ordered to remain silent about the entire case and the events that took place. He was reminded that he was an active military officer of high rank and that he had to follow orders, which Admiral Byrd, of course, did, and he never again spoke publicly about this event or his encounter with the underground civilization of this continent. The last entry in this alleged diary appears on December 30th, 1956, just a few months before his death. An entry in which he says this. He says that he followed orders all those years, even though they were in conflict with his moral values and principles, and that he hopes this truth will not die with him. He warns about the rapidly growing military complex in the United States in much the same way as President Dwight Eisenhower did in his farewell address in 1961. The year when he warned about the rogue and rapidly growing American military-industrial complex over which he had no authority, Admiral Byrd, in the last sentence of this alleged diary, says this, "I have seen the land beyond the pole. The center of the great unknown." Did the message he allegedly delivered to the top of the American military, the Pentagon, and the President of the United States change anything for the better? Maybe it did, because in 1961, the famous Antarctic Treaty came into effect, after which the race for Antarctic territory ended and, effectively, access to this place was prohibited. Access was prohibited to almost everyone except scientific expeditions, and over the following decades, nuclear weapons were tested less and less, and even treaties on disarmament and the reduction of nuclear arms were signed. Unfortunately, after World War II, such weapons have never again been used for military purposes. It seems that the warning messages from this alleged civilization may have actually fallen on fertile ground. A bit slower than it should have, but better late than never. But what is most important in this whole story? Is this a true story and a real diary? The thing is, at this moment, none of us can know this with absolute certainty, because this diary does not exist in physical form, and today it is very difficult to even find its source in electronic form. There is a real chance that someone may have decided to take advantage of the discovery of the real lost diary in 1996. In order to spice up the story with yet another supposedly lost diary, but this one is packed with far more fantastic information. Either that's the case, or this is a true story, no matter how strange it may sound. An underground land called Ariane, with its tall, blonde inhabitants who have lived in that area long before humanity ever appeared on the surface, where the main entrances to their underground world are located at our poles. An apparently peaceful species that has witnessed our rise and fall multiple times, and after each of our downfalls, they would help us rebuild our civilization. Whether another downfall will happen, or if we've actually learned something from our early mistakes, remains to be seen. Because whether this story is true or not, our civilization is, regardless, at a crucial moment where it will either solve its civilizational problems and prosper, or it will fail ingloriously. Unfortunately, there is no third option. Goodbye.